5 years ago, my father was in a car accident. Um, he suffered a severe brain injury. So if you guys know anything about Luke Siegel, that is my father, was my father. He was basically a toddler in a 50-something-year-old man's body. He was in ICU for 3 months, in the hospital for another month. And then, to make matters worse, about 6 months after the car accident, the doctors found cancer. And because of the brain injury, they decided that my father was not a candidate for chemo or radiation or surgery. We talked to several doctors, and they basically said that the best option for him was to just let the cancer take its course. There was nothing we could do. And so for 4 years, I watched as my father's health deteriorated. I watched as the cancer just took him. But through it all, I saw God's amazing love. It wasn't easy, and I had a lot of moments where I was so angry at God. How could he do this to our family? We have been so faithful. Church every Sunday, volunteer, everything that you're supposed to do. How could he do this? How could we go through all of this? But every time that I would just lay down on the ground and cry and ask why, he showed me that he was still with me. Throughout this whole ordeal with my dad, we had so much trouble with health insurance that wouldn't cover certain things, and so we had to pay for things out of pocket, and I was working 3 jobs. My oldest brother had a family to raise, but he was working as much as he could too, trying to figure out what to do, how to help mom with all of dad's medical expenses, and then somehow, some way, someone would just come up and say, "Hey, you guys have been on my mind here. Do you guys need, I don't know, things like nutrients?" He had a feeding tube. And it just came out of the blue. There was one time when someone from the church here in Lubbock called me and said, "Hey, I'm going to your hometown this weekend, and I really would like to see your family." And they didn't know my family at all. But they just wanted to stop by and pray for him, and brought an oxygen tank that he couldn't have known that my dad needed. But God told him, "Hey, you need to bring this." And so we had oxygen for a month. There were times when I myself struggled, and some unexpected expense came up, and I didn't have money to pay bills, and someone would call me and say, "Hey, do you want to babysit?" And then all of a sudden, there you go, that's exactly what I needed. Or times when I didn't have any food because everything I had went to my parents. And someone would call and say, "Hey, do you want to join us for dinner?" And how could anyone have known that I was struggling unless God put it in their heart? And so I watched all of that. And don't get me wrong, I definitely had my moments where I was still very angry. I still get very angry. But I saw him through it all. And my dad passed away in September. And I saw the day that a few days before he passed away, I had this amazing dream. My father, my sick father, was, I don't know, we were putting him in a truck. They had come to visit for some reason in my dream, and we were putting him in a truck, and I was saying goodbye. And there was this storm coming, and I could see the storm coming, and I was telling my mom, you need to get out of here before the storm comes. And I'm saying goodbye, and I'm kissing him, and then I turn around, and a healthy version of my father, the father that I remember from my childhood, was standing in front of me, and he had a crown all the way around his head, and it was gold, and he had gold, kind of like blood drops, like coming down from that crown, but they were gold, they weren't red. And I turned around and looked at him, and I couldn't see his eyes, but I knew it was my father, and I held on to him, and I said, "Daddy, don't leave me." And all he did was hold me. He didn't say anything, but I knew that he was saying goodbye. And when he passed away a few days later, it didn't hit me. To me, it was just a dream. But when he passed away a few days later, I realized that that was God's way of saying, it's time, and I'm taking him. And it was my dad's way of saying goodbye. So I got what I needed. I was so far away. I wasn't home when he passed away. I was here in Lubbock. We made the decision to stay here even when he was put in a hospice. So to me, that dream was just absolutely beautiful. And it stayed with me throughout all of it. And God is still writing my story, and I don't have this perfect happy ending. He's still working on it. But I would like to say that even through all of our hardships, I just want you guys to know that God is there, and will always be by your side.